Nestled high in the rugged mountains of northwestern Colorado, far from the prying eyes of the world, lay the secluded village of Blackwood. In the 1920s, this remote settlement was known only to a few, a place where travelers rarely ventured and from which even fewer returned. Blackwood's isolation was not the result of its geography alone. It was a village shrouded in a dark, unspoken secret, a community bound by a shared bloodlust. Thomas Callahan, a seasoned journalist from Denver, had heard whispers of Blackwood for years. The stories were always vague and disjointed, filled with references to disappearances, strange rituals, and an unsettling sense of dread. Driven by curiosity and the promise of a groundbreaking story, he decided to investigate the village that time seemed to have forgotten. Callahan's journey took him through treacherous mountain passes and dense forests. By the time he reached Blackwood, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the village. The houses, made of dark, weathered wood, seemed to blend into the forest, as if they were part of the landscape itself. A chill ran down Callahan's spine as he approached, but he was determined to uncover the truth. As Callahan entered the village, he was greeted by the mayor, Elias Thorne. Thorne was a tall, imposing man with piercing blue eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. He welcomed Callahan warmly, offering him lodging in the village's only inn and inviting him to join the community for dinner that evening. Callahan accepted, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The villagers went about their daily routines, but there was a sense of something hidden beneath the surface. Their smiles seemed forced, their eyes cold and calculating. That night, Callahan joined the villagers in the town hall, a large, dimly lit building at the center of Blackwood. The long wooden tables were laden with food and drink, and the villagers chatted amiably, though Callahan noticed that their conversations always seemed to end abruptly when he approached. Mayor Thorne stood and raised a glass, welcoming Callahan once again and proposing a toast to new friends. The villagers echoed his sentiments, raising their glasses and smiling at Callahan, though the journalist couldn't help but notice a predatory glint in their eyes. As the meal progressed, Callahan engaged in small talk with several villagers, learning that Blackwood had been founded in the early 1800s by a group of pioneers seeking solitude and freedom from the rapidly industrializing world. The villagers spoke of their self-sufficiency with pride, though Callahan sensed that there was more to their story. After dinner, Callahan retired to his room at the inn, but sleep eluded him. The oppressive silence of the village, broken only by the occasional howl of a distant wolf, kept him on edge. Determined to learn more, he decided to explore Blackwood under the cover of darkness. As he crept through the village, careful to avoid detection, Callahan noticed a flickering light coming from a building on the outskirts of town. He approached cautiously, peering through a window to see what was inside. What he saw chilled him to the bone. The building was filled with old books, strange symbols, and tools that looked disturbingly like implements of torture. At the center of the room stood a large, ornate table, stained with what appeared to be blood. Callahan realized that this was no ordinary village. Blackwood was a place of horrors, where dark rituals and unspeakable acts were carried out in secret. Callahan knew he had to leave Blackwood immediately, but as he turned to go, he was confronted by Mayor Thorne and several other villagers. Their friendly facades were gone, replaced by expressions of cold malice. "You've seen too much, Mr. Callahan," Thorne said, his voice devoid of warmth. "We can't let you leave." Before Callahan could react, the villagers seized him, binding his hands and dragging him to the town hall. There, he was thrown into a small, dark cell beneath the building, the door slamming shut behind him. Days passed in a blur for Callahan, trapped in the darkness with only his thoughts and the occasional sound of footsteps above. He knew he had to escape, but his captors had left him no means to do so. It was then that he remembered the penknife he always carried, hidden in the lining of his boot. Carefully, Callahan retrieved the knife and began working on the ropes that bound his wrists. Hours later, his hands were free, and he set to work on the door. The lock was old and rusty, and with enough persistence, he managed to force it open. Under the cover of night, Callahan slipped out of the town hall and made his way through the village, avoiding the patrols of the villagers. He headed towards the forest, hoping to lose himself in its depths and find a way back to civilization. As he ran through the forest, Callahan could hear the villagers behind him, their shouts echoing through the trees. They were relentless, determined not to let him escape and expose their dark secret to the world. Callahan's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled over roots and rocks, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He knew he couldn't outrun them forever, but he had to try. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows deepening and the sounds of pursuit growing louder. Just when he thought he couldn't go any further, Callahan stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. He darted inside, hoping to find some place to hide or defend himself. The cabin was small and decrepit, but it offered a brief respite from the relentless chase. Callahan quickly barricaded the door and looked for anything he could use as a weapon. He found an old axe, its blade rusty but still sharp enough to do damage. He positioned himself near the door, ready to fight for his life. It wasn't long before the villagers arrived, their torches casting an eerie glow through the cabin's windows. Mayor Thorne stepped forward, his expression one of cold determination. "Come out, Callahan," Thorne called. "You can't hide forever. Join us, and you might live to see another day." Callahan knew that was a lie. He gripped the axe tighter, ready to face whatever came next. The door burst open, and the villagers surged inside. Callahan swung the axe with all his might, catching one of his attackers in the shoulder. The villager screamed in pain, but the others pressed forward, overwhelming Callahan with their numbers. Just when it seemed like all was lost, a deafening roar echoed through the forest. The ground shook, and the villagers froze in their tracks. Callahan took advantage of the distraction, breaking free from their grasp and fleeing into the night. He ran blindly through the forest, not daring to look back. Eventually, he stumbled upon a narrow mountain path that led him to safety. Exhausted and battered, he made his way back to Denver, where he recounted his harrowing ordeal. Callahan's story was met with skepticism at first, but as more details emerged and other disappearances were linked to Blackwood, the authorities could no longer ignore the truth. A team was sent to investigate the village, but when they arrived, they found it abandoned. The villagers had vanished, leaving behind only the remnants of their dark rituals and the chilling evidence of their deeds. Blackwood became a ghost town, a place shunned by all who knew its history. Callahan's account of the village of serial killers in the mountains of northwestern Colorado became a legend, a tale of horror and survival that would be told for generations. And so, the shadows of Blackwood remained, a dark and unsettling reminder of the evil that can lurk in the most secluded corners of the world.